It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. Today's date is the 15th of December. This is the C block, the Charlie block, which means we start at right around 7:40, and we're right on time this morning. It's 7:48. John, before I get into my stuff again, anything you want to bring up in the C block here? Any topics you want to cover?
Yeah, I would just point folks to johncombest.com this morning. You know, one thing that I'm doing, I think that's helpful for folks that are looking for last-minute gift ideas. I have a few political books for folks who want to strengthen their institutional knowledge in Missouri politics. I have a few links up. So if you're looking for a stocking stuffer for policy people in your life, or maybe even, Brad, you're looking for a little thank you note to Cindy Cristofanelli for making sure you were not asked to come to the St. Charles County Republican Central Committee. She may have been vital in making sure that you didn't waste a few hours on a weekend. You can find those on johncombest.com today.
John, I'm not trying to be. I'll go back on this. If you listen to the B block, we talked about this. I'm not beating up the St. Charles County Republican Committee. I just think they need to bring themselves into the future. I really do.
To your credit, Brad, if you look at this summer, one of the gold standard of candidate training, in my opinion, is House Republican Campaign Committee, and they had a number of speakers there that on different things. They had Mark Ellinger, who is an expert attorney, talking about the legal state, talking about kind of, Brad, if you had to draw a parallel, maybe kind of what Mike Summer talks about. And if you go to an HRCC event, you're also going to hear about media. You're going to hear about messaging and digital. I think your point is taken, Brad. And in the past, you've spoken there and you've talked about media things. And I would point out to you, Brad, that if you care enough, that it's a month away, I would imagine they could either rejigger the schedule and have someone there talking about media, or you could offer a constructive piece of feedback that says, hey, why don't you have one of your speakers at least touch on digital media? That would be a productive way to handle it. But I'm not suggesting that getting on the air and kvetching without taking any real positive action is a petty, passive-aggressive thing to do. But I'm saying that there's probably a constructive way to handle it, too.
Maybe I should call Mike Elam and get him his opinion on this. Call him right now. What do you think, John?
Yeah, absolutely not. You were going to talk about something, Brad.
Okay. There was a time when you became, if you were going to be an immigrant coming to the United States, you were told you can't be a drag on the public funds. You can't, essentially, you had to have, and I think, if I even remember, I think my dad talking about this, that you had to have a sponsor, that when you immigrated from the other country, and keep in mind, my father is a first-generation American. I am, on my father's side, a second-generation American. My grandfather was an illegal immigrant who broke the law and for decades, crept in the shadows in North City, but at the same point in time, which is sort of interesting, is my sister picked this up. My grandfather was a brilliant engineer, undocumented, he's an undocumented citizen, but he was also an undegreed engineer who has, to this day, you can look up on the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, 2 patents issued to my grandfather's name.
And he was not a drag on society. Continue, Brad.
Okay. The Somalis have become a drag on the United States. And nationally, get this number, okay? This is not me making up numbers. This is research. 42% of the Somalis in the U.S. are on SNAP, okay? And if you go into Minneapolis, St. Paul, the numbers are even higher. Some of the categories, some of the various things that they are getting from either the county or the city or the state of Minneapolis, some as high as 58 to 65% of the entire Somali population are getting government subsidies. Now, the problem with that is that what happened to our immigration laws? What happened to the fact that when you came to this country and you became you ultimately worked to become a naturalized citizen and you went through the process and the whole bit, that you were being taught to be assimilated into our community, taught to be, even though you may have your individual, heritage, and we can use that example of the Hill in St. Louis, where a lot of the Italian immigrants ended up on the Hill, but yet they essentially assimilated into society. You look at the Yogi Berra, Joe Garagiola, their fathers, and I believe in both cases their fathers were immigrants to this country. There's a famous picture, I don't know if you've ever seen this picture, of Joe Garagiola's father and Yogi Berra's father, both being construction guys, sitting at lunch, eating out of their lunch pails on a construction job. And once again, these people contributed to the society. But what do we have? We have in Minneapolis, we have the Somalis who are just taking. Now, I'm not saying all of them do, but according to the statistics, over half of them are on some kind of public aid. And to the point where, like, what's wrong with this picture? You know what I'm saying, John?
Isn't the motto, though, Brad, give us your weak, your welfare-addled, your Somali? Isn't that what Lady Liberty says in that book that she's holding?
The interesting thing for me is I'm not going to broad brush all the immigrants, and I will say this, that I don't do a lot of time where I'm in Uber, but I do use Uber from time to time. Matter of fact, sometimes if I drop my car to get it fixed, I take an Uber back to my office or stuff like that kind of stuff. I would have to say that probably in the last couple of years when I've been in an Uber, I would probably say 90% of the people that have picked me up and have been very kind and very generous and did a nice job and were very cordial to me were immigrants because they had thick accidents from some different country. And once again, they're out there working, they're making money, and it's interesting. I love to talk to these people. I ask them, what are you doing? Several of them tell me they're doing day jobs, they're doing, Uber at night to take care of things, to make some extra money. Most of these are family people. Those people I applaud. The people that I have a problem with are the people that come and America, what are you going to give me? And B, steal from us. Like, they're still saying, some of the statistics saying that the Somali thing is $1 billion in fraud. $1 billion. That's one city, John. And also Mike Otten, Mr. Info Dude, said now there's a big thing that same thing's happened in Maine. There's a big Somali population in Maine that's done the same thing. They've rigged the system. They've built the system. And the system right now, that like what Trump's doing, I don't know if you heard this thing, now he's going to investigate every single one of the Afghans that came over after the botched, where we left Afghanistan and the whole Joe Biden thing, and people were falling off of planes and that whole terrible situation. And in the St. Louis area, I don't know him directly, but I have a couple friends of mine that do know Mr. Schmitz, the father of one of the Marines that was killed in Afghanistan. How sad is that we had to give up so many lives? And essentially, that was an embarrassing situation where we're like leaving town with our tail between our legs. And it reminds me of, you watch some of these footage of us getting out of Vietnam, it's so sad. I mean, there's one video that I see from time to time where they have so many helicopters that have landed on this aircraft carrier. They can't get enough aircraft onto the aircraft carrier. They're trying to get out of Vietnam in a hurry. They're dumping the aircraft. They're dumping planes and helicopters off the side of the ship into the ocean so they have more room so other planes and things like that land. How sad is that? How could we ever repeat something like that? I just don't get it. I don't get it, John.
Yeah, and I think let's go back to the Somali thing. Why on earth do they choose Minnesota? I looked up the temperature today in Somalia, and it's 87 degrees Fahrenheit.
See, I said the same thing. If you're a Somali, that would be like someone who lives in an equatorial company or a country. You're right on the equator. You're someplace in Central America, someplace in Africa, which is essentially where they're at. If you know where Somalia is, it's very close to the equator. Why would you pick Minneapolis? I mean,
or why it would be like taking an Eskimo and putting them on the equator.
Or yes, and exactly. See, and it's funny. I said that to somebody else, and they go, "Oh, you're being prejudiced." I go, "No, I'm not." Think about that for a minute. If you are used to living in like the Caribbean, or like even and here's the perfect example: when people retire in the St. Louis area. And I have several friends of mine who've done this. Where do they go, John? Where do they go, John?
They go to L.A. They go to Lower Arnold.
No, they go
it's at least a half degree warmer there. Where do they go, Brad?
They go to Florida, John. They go to Florida. Because
your son wanted to get away from you so badly that he moved to Florida. And he's not even a retiree.
You know what? To a certain extent, you're right. I think my son did want to get away from me.
Well, and he knew that he enjoys fishing. And he's like, Brad will never get on a fishing boat. So I'll move to Florida. I'll take up fishing. And that way, Brad can just call me sometimes when he's on the air.
Remember, I think I had him on the air once. Didn't I have him on the air once when he was in the Gulf of Mexico?
He was on the boat. You called him on his birthday, and he was doing a little bit of birthday fishing out there.
He was out in the Gulf. Back then, it was the Gulf of Mexico. He was, because he's got this cool little house. He's got this, I don't know if you call it some kind of inlet. He's literally got like a river in his backyard with a dock on it. And if he gets into his boat and he goes far enough, he goes into the Pensacola Bay. And if he keeps going, he's in the Gulf. He's out there. Matter of fact, every once in a while, he tells me he'll be right, near the Pensacola Naval Air Station there, where they train a lot of the pilots and stuff like that. I'm thinking to myself, God, he does have the life. I mean,
what a life. And he told me, I know that we're getting close to time, Brad, but he told me that I could actually divulge because he wanted to make sure you were okay with it. He said that him and his siblings, it's 10 days away, but they wanted to clear it with you. They got you a similar place. It's kind of the same setup as the one he has, but it backs up to Coldwater Creek.
Well, John, it's funny.
And they got you a little John boat.
It's funny you should mention
that. You can go out in the Coldwater Creek.
It's funny you should mention that because of the fact that, not to make him jealous of me, but after I was there the last time, I told him, I said, Brett, what you don't understand is that I bought myself a boat and I took it up off of McDonald, which is still closed, I believe. I'll have to go check that again, which the false pretense is why they closed McDonald. They said to replace the bridge, which there was no bridge there.
There's no bridge, Brad, and you called them on it.
And then they were taking out all the polluted soil. But I took my little boat, I parked on the shoulder of McDonald, I pulled my boat down into Coldwater Creek, and I went all through Hazelwood and all through Florissant and then up through Spanish Lake, our old stomping grounds, and I ended up in the Mississippi River ultimately with my little boat up there, and it was a wonderful trip.
I heard about the little Indian girl you met too, Brad. And you got in trouble because you said you wanted to show her your Sacagawea.
Well, you know what? Elizabeth Warren was actually very nice to me that day, so she wasn't as snotty as she normally comes across. She was actually very, very nice, and she asked me about my heritage, and I said, well, believe it or not, my grandfather was an illegal immigrant, and my grandmother, well, we don't know about her. Okay, John, are we done?
And then you guys compared notes about your gallbladders. It was a beautiful, romantic, geriatric get-together.
Yes. John, on Wednesday, I go back on standby. On Wednesday.
Nice. I love it, Brad.
I go back on standby. And you thought that it would never happen. You thought it would never happen, John.
Dad, I just looked at your blood test again. You need some protein. Okay, 1 muscle milk a day is not enough, please.
I need 2. Okay, John, you know what? Can I tell you something, John?
Please do, Brad.
I always appreciate you on the show. If I haven't told you enough
Brad,
lately.
Start.
I love it, and it's wonderful, and this is the highlight of my day. It goes downhill from this point.
It all goes downhill for all of us after this, Brad. I'll talk to you tomorrow.